tall, gangly thing?
TFT is a game of variance. That's true, there's no disputing that. But one thing I hate is when people say that tournaments are a coin flip. You high roll and you win, you low roll and you lose. I just don't think that's true. While a single game of TFT will never tell the full story, there are players in North America who make their own luck. So I set out to find who these players are and just how consistent they can be in a tournament setting. In this video, I'm going to illustrate my findings and let you know who I think is the strongest North American tournament player. In addition, you can use this data to draw your own conclusions and let me know who you think is the strongest North American player. In order to make the data as accurate as possible for this video, I had to make a few judgment calls on what data I wanted to use. I decided to only use tournament results from set 4 until now. The competitive scene in TFT really didn't take shape until set 3 or 4, and the majority of tournament results from set 3 are all gone to the wayside. I personally didn't feel that only using one tournament from set 3 would give a clear indication of player skill in that set, so I've decided to only use tournament results from set 4 until now. With that said, the events included in this data are any major event that allowed a player to qualify for a regional qualifier, mid-set finale, regional finals, or worlds. I didn't include any of the open bracket events from set 4 or the last chance qualifiers. For the players in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the 15 power ranked players as ranked by the Don't Talk If You Don't Know panel. While this may not encompass every single player in TFT, it does cover a large majority of players who have had strong tournament performances in the past. Before I made this video, I ran a poll on Twitter to see who people believed were the strongest North American tournament performers. These were the results. The clear favorites are Ramblin', Robin, and Milk, with Ramkev, Sox, and Spencer coming in behind them. It's interesting to note that Ramblin' is the only player in the top 6 who has not been to Worlds before. Now, let's look at some data. The first thing I wanted to do was see the big picture of tournament performances. I charted out every tournament placement these players have had since set 4 in order to get a bird's eye view. The more green the square is, the closer they place to first, and the more red it is, the closer they place to last. We can use non-Tahm as an example to see his 8th place finish in a set 4 Challenger Series, as well as his 1st place finish in the Fates Qualifier number 1. Now there are a couple different ways to look at this chart. The first thing to note is the pure volume of green on a player's row. When we do this, we'll notice that players like Robin and Spencer stand out as the best, with players like Sox, Ramblin', and K3 Soju not too far behind. We can also use the columns to judge the poor performances from players. By looking at this column, you can see that players like Ramblin', Spencer, and Sox have already made their way into a middle of the pack performance, while players like Kyun, Solus, and Soju still have placements near the bottom. Now let's give some of these players the benefit of the doubt. Odds are every one of these players has low rolled in tournament in some capacity. To counteract this, let's drop the lowest placement from every one of the players on this list. With this change, there are two striking differences I notice. The first is that even with their lowest placement dropped, some players still have a few poor performances, such as Kyun, Solus, and Goobums. The second thing I noticed is that the consistent players I mentioned earlier have scorelines that really start to pull ahead of the pack, with Ramblin', Spencer, Robin, and Sox being the strongest examples. I also wanted to track players' performances by sets. This is important because it allows us to see players' trajectories over time. When we map out the scores that way, we can see which players felt most comfortable in certain sets. For example, while Soju may get a lot of flack for his tournament performances, he was actually one of the best performers in all of set 4. Despite this, his reputation was sullied by a weak regionals performance. Sox also stands out as the most consistent player from set 4, with a 15th place finish at Fates Qualifier number 2 being the only outlier. Robin and Spencer both dominated set 5's competitive scene with top cut performances in every event that they entered. While Milk only entered 2 events, he had a reasonable performance in both, with a Worlds qualification spot earned at Set 5 regional finals. And in my opinion, the most interesting part of this breakdown is KOG'MAW's improvement from Set 4 to Set 5 and 6. Since his below average placements in Set 4, KOG'MAW has slowly improved his placements, just barely missing Worlds in Set 5 and coming out with a 1st place finish at the Piltover Cup in Set 6. While placements are great to look at, they don't tell the whole picture. The difference between 4th and 7th can actually be pretty small, especially in tournaments with a small sample size of games or with a small player base. So I wanted to find a stat that shows consistency in a different way. In poker, players can be measured by the amount of times that they've placed in the money. This refers to a specific percentile of placements placements where players earn money for their placement. Because of all the different structures and prize pools in TFT, you can't really apply that one-to-one. However, a different metric that serves a similar purpose would be final day rate. This stat measures how often a player makes it to the final day of play in a multi-day tournament. While the difference between 4th and 7th may be small, the difference between 4th and 97th is much larger. Right off the bat, Ramblin', Spencer, Robin, Milk, Sox, and KOG'MAW make up the top 6. Because of his low sample size, I don't really feel comfortable including Milk in this group, even though he has shown to be a strong tournament performer when he tries. With final day rates of 70% and higher, Robin, Spencer, and Ramblin' have proven that even when they don't win tournaments, they are very good at controlling low roll and still making it to the final day. Another interesting note is KOG'MAW's final day rate. Despite the fact that KOG'MAW has made it to the final day of competition in both Set 4 and Set 5 regionals, he struggles to make it to the final day in events like Challenger Series and in the Nightbringer Cup. I don't want to speculate too much, but the stats seem to indicate that while KOG'MAW may not be the most consistent player, he always seems to show up when he needs to. Now that we've seen a bunch of different stats, I want to narrow down the field to 5 players and look at the quality of their results. Based on what we've seen, I'm going to narrow down the field to Ramblin', Robin, Spencer, Sox, and KOG'MAW. Milk is obviously a fan favorite that's missing from this list, but I just don't think he has a large enough sample size to make him a fair candidate. This is where things become a bit more subjective. 2 things to look for in these resumes is the prestige of a tournament and sets in which these results took place. For instance, Ramblin' is the only player to have his 3 best results across 3 different sets. Players like Spencer and Sox, on the other hand, showed a certain level of dominance in a specific set. Robin has the most top 2 finishes among these players, and KOG'MAW has multiple first place finishes and a regionals placement just outside World's contention. So the question is, what do you value more? Highest peaks, consistency, final day rate? How about quality of losses? All of these things play a factor, and honestly, it's up to you to decide what you value the most. This is the hardest part because there's no objective winner when it comes to this data. However, if I had to choose one, I would choose Spencer. Spencer not only has the largest volume of strong performances, but also has the highest quality losses. He's second in final day rate and also has the second largest sample size among all of the players listed in this video. Spencer may not have the peaks of Robin or KOG'MAW, but he has the consistency of Sox and Ramblin', but with a larger sample size and with better average placements. Spencer's biggest issue is that he doesn't have a first place finish in an event like mid-set finale or regional finals, but he seems to always be in contention and is at the final day vying for a first place finish. If you don't know that much about Spencer stylistically, he is a very mechanical player. He's able to do these very large roll downs incredibly quickly with 50 gold, transition his entire board in a turn, and it seems like he's just never out of his comfort zone. He plays from win streak, he plays from loss streak, and when it comes to tournament, being comfortable in the spot that you find yourself in is one of the biggest keys to victory. Like I said, this is a tough decision. There's no objective answer to this question, but Spencer has ticked all the boxes for me. I'm sure there are many of you who disagree with my decision, and I want to hear why. Let me know in the comments below who you think is the strongest North American tournament player. If you liked this video, please consider liking and subscribing. It goes a long way in supporting the channel and also helps me understand what kind of content you guys like to see. That's all I've got for now, but I'll catch you next time.